Okay, so doing a literature review, or review of the literature. So we're going to look at the role of theories in your proposal and in your dissertation. So what's the purpose of the literature review? The 3 stages to a literature search, and then how to write up your literature review. Okay, and looking at different frameworks in which you can review your literature. There's different ways of doing your literature review. So it's important to consider your approach that you will use in writing it up. But one of the important things you do need to understand is the role of theories. So again, an example of using a mind map. It can be quite a simple one. These are the main topics that we are covering: the role of theories, purpose, the 3 stages, writing it up, review frameworks, and what you shouldn't do. And that's it expanded. Okay? So you can have as much or as little detail in a mind map as you need. And that helps structure your thinking and your writing. So consider using mind maps. Each one of these then expands into larger segments, and each one of these can expand yet again into other segments. There's plenty of free software out there for mind mapping. Use it, people, because it helps structure your thinking. And you can see it at a single glance, and with the newer programs, a lot of these can be simply exported to Word as an essay. So, what is the role of theory? There's a reading link in the thing for you as well. They're also on the reading list. The role of theories in your project. So, without reading, you won't get to the topic. Okay? You might decide on an area, but you've got to read to refine what are the key issues that are at play. You need to show what previous research has been done on your topic, and particularly in the area that you are wanting to research on, what have other people done, not done. So you need to show you've understood the main theories in the subject area and the main criticisms that have been made of the work previously. So the important part is what's been written about this subject previously, what is the previous research, and what has the criticism of that previous research been. So those are the main elements. What has been written, what research has been done, what are the criticisms. And it's in the criticism areas that you can pick up on topics or a focus point or something you want to maybe clarify as an area to research further. It might be that this area requires further research on X or on Y, or this is not clear if it applies to men equally as women. So you've got to look in those terms. So what is a theory, people?
Idea?
Partly. It's only half of it. What else goes with the theory?
The concept of somebody who has talking about topic and has had the assumption about it.
So there's an assumption. He's given an explanation at some level.
It's a way to conceptualize things.
It's a way of conceptualizing things. Okay? But it's also more than that. Theory is also based on previous research as well. Okay? Theory provides the language, concepts, and assumptions that help researchers make sense of what they're investigating and to connect with others. Okay? So you get on the same page, in other words. You get used to using the same language. And if that language has changed over the years, then you've got to get with the new language. Like drug addiction, move to substance abuse, to drug dependency. You know, so the language will change, but the topic is the same. But all of those are around, you know, originally they were drug addicts, then it's substance abusers, then it's drug misusers, as political correctness comes along and influences titles. So a researcher builds up a concept. I have an idea. My idea is. and it helps summarize your previous research and formulate what they're going to be doing. Okay, so it brings the reading, the ideas, the concepts together and gives you a direction forward through that maze of information. It's a guide for your future course of action. It helps you formulate the areas that are needed. So theory is an important guide. It's pointing you. It's your torch that you are using to shine on a particular topic. And depending on the kind of theory you're using, you will have a different kind of light. Is it a pinprick? Is it a broad? Is it a narrow beam? What is the theory covering? So theories are a set of explanations about a phenomenon. That's really what a theory is. It's an explanation about a certain thing. And that can be based on research. So it's coming out of observations and research. And you're coming to a theory. When I add heat to water, it gets hot, therefore heat makes water boil. My theory is heat can make water boil. You know, that's where you're coming from. At other times is you have an idea, you've thought it through, you're linking to other ideas, and two ideas previously not combined together might form a new idea that you then go to research. So we've got behaviorism, we've got cognitive therapy. Or what happens if we combine them to CBT? Will it work or not work? Okay. So a theory is a set of well-developed concepts related through statements of relationship which together constitute an integrated framework can be used to explain or predict the phenomenon. So theory is an explanation of a situation or phenomenon. Domestic violence occurs because power imbalance in a relationship, cultural differences, gender, sexism issues, socio-political. So depending on what level you take, you can get a different explanation for the same problem. So a politics student would have a very different explanation to domestic violence than what we would have. We would be looking at it in terms of relationship dynamics. They would be looking at it in terms of power inequality dynamics and economic. Okay? So your theory determines at what level you are looking at your phenomenon. So theory is important. So there are different kinds of theories. Different kinds of levels of theories is a more accurate description. To classify theories, there are 4 levels: meta-theories, grand theories, mid-range, and microtheories. Okay? We're going to go through each one in detail. So 4 theories, going from top, which is the biggest one, to microtheories, which is the smallest level. So you've got 4 levels or tiers of theories. So not all theories are equal. And if you can think of how you classify theories, becomes an important explanation. You can begin to structure your dissertation around each level of different theories as well. So meta-theory is a theory whose subject matter is some theory. It's a theory about a theory, is what a meta-theory is. Meta meaning all-encompassing, overarching. It's a major theory about other theories. So psychodynamic theory can have a meta-theory that everything comes from the unconscious, but underneath it you've got Freud, Anna Freud, Jung, all the other subgroups who have their theories. But their main theories are coming from the idea. The meta-theory would be everything's come from the unconscious.
It's like a main umbrella.
Yeah, it's a main umbrella. Describes the broad philosophical assumptions concerning reality that are accepted in social science as clearly demarcated boundaries of thought in a particular field of study. Okay? So if you're seeing anything with a meta-theory, it's a useful thing to go and read. because they are summarizing a lot of the other theories for you. They're doing a nice literature review. They're bringing them all together and drawing out and saying, this is the theory about. This is how we understand X overall. All these people have done bits and pieces of work, but this is how, when we bring them all together, this is how we can make sense of it. So, meta-theories are very useful because they clarify the general assumptions, they specify important problems, and specify what are acceptable methods often.
Can you give an example?
So like CBT, Freud, the meta-theory is everything comes from the unconscious. So it's describing the core principles, ideas, that everything is related to the unconscious, whereas Freud related his much more to the unconscious. Kohut and Kernberg focused much more on the ego dynamics, and Freud focused on ego dynamics. Jung went to out of the individual unconscious to the collective unconscious.
The family of the
Yeah, so he's taking all their little bits and ideas and they distilling them up to a major theory.
It's like a starting point.
Okay. So the next level down from a meta-theory is grand theories are defined as all-inclusive unified theory. So it's a step down. So you're going to one of the major theorists, Erikson, Freud, Jung, Beck. Okay? And they're seeking to give a broad description. So Marx is an example of a grand theory. Seeks to explain social behavior, provides key concepts and principles that are used and dominate within the area. So a grand theory would be Rogers person-centered, would be a possible example of grand theory. Okay? Because it's quite an overarching, it has a seminal impact. It can also be a micro-theory, but it's acting also as a grand theory because so many other people have adopted it into their descriptions.
So it's like it stands alone and it's within the meta theory.
Yes. Yeah, so the meta-theory is the umbrella. This is one of the branches of the umbrella. One of the major struts. One of the main struts. Yeah. So there'll be a number of main struts that hold the meta-theory up. Yeah. Okay? So things like feminism, Marxism, democracy, these are meta-theories. These are grand... Oh! Thank you. So,
There's something about this room today. You got the first one.
so Marxism, feminism, these are big theories. They explain and are then applied to a range of problems to try and make sense of them. Okay, so all of these can be used to explain phenomenon in different ways. So now you've got your mid-range theories, and these are connect to the grand theory. They're coming from here, but they're going now into more detail for a specific area with empirical evidence. So a Marxist explanation of domestic violence would look like X. That it's the economic imbalance between the man and the woman, where the man earns all the money and the woman doesn't. Okay? And so the economic wage that the woman earns by caring for the house and children isn't calculated as part of earning. And so the man feels deprived of an income from the woman. And that's a Marxist explanation of domestic violence. Okay? And this will begin to look for that in action.
So mid-range looks for the action.
For the action. Okay?
To understand.
It has a more limited set of assumptions with specific hypotheses and looks for more specific investigations. Okay? This is what you guys will be mostly using, are the mid-range theories. Explanations of. So this is Rogers, Freud, the broader theories that you will have been using in bringing them together, Beck, Ellis, are mid-range theories.
So it's becoming more specific.
Yeah, they're more specific and applicable. They're action-orientated, in focus often.
Sorry, do we need to make explicit in like which type of theory we're gonna use?
No, you don't need to make explicit which theory. Yeah, it's for your understanding about when you're reading theory, not all theory is the same. There are different levels, and if you can get that into your head, you can begin structuring how you write, using maybe a meta theory as a starting point, and then bringing in the other theories. So it gives you over. I'll be taking a feminist approach on viewing this, but utilizing Beck's depression inventory to make sense of, and then you weave the two together. Okay. So you have different levels, but it's for you to begin to understand not all theory is at the same level.
To pick bits from bits
Yeah.
and pieces to get what
Yeah. And this is where when people writing up the literature review get confused about the different levels of theory, assuming and argue almost on the same level when you can't. It becomes, you're not arguing the same point necessarily. Okay. Yeah, it's like an example of a meta theory or mid-range theory. So Rogers, Beck, Ellis, are all mid-range theories. They have a large theory that covers a specific topic and area, but you wouldn't use it to explain the whole of human behavior. You couldn't take their theory and explain larger elements. Okay, it's much more narrow. You'll take principles or ideas out their theory, and those can go up, but not all their detail. So the idea of Beck's thinking causes problems could be a principle that gets pulled through into a grand theory or meta theory. So you'll see the line of stuff that comes from small to broader to broader. Okay. Then microtheories, they're the lowest level of theories, and they focus on small, localized, specific explanations. So things like case studies are very specific research focus. They're limited generalization, and this is where a lot of your projects will be at a microtheory level because you've used a small, localized group of students specific at NUC, so it's really only applicable within this context. Okay. But microtheories, case studies play an essential role, these small research, because people draw on them and pull out. And that's where psychoanalytic research uses case studies, because it provides rich detail that you would not get from a survey. Only by doing a detailed case study of seeing a patient week in, week out for 5 years, and you've written up and analyzed it in detail, do you get the nuances, the subtleties of therapy over a long period of time, which you wouldn't get if you handed out a snapshot questionnaire. And that's where micro case studies, micro theories, limited explanations become important, because ideas can be drawn out of them. For me, it's like the vaccination. It's the small weak bit that gets pulled out and can be expanded upon and thought about, and so it goes back up. So you've got two levels. You've got grand theories coming down, informing the micro theories and what you're doing, and micro theories building all the way up in principles and ideas or concepts that come out. It's inductive and deductive. Okay? Going to the point or going to the broad. That's what you're dealing with each time. Inductive and deductive. So, meta-theories, what role do they play? They form the philosophical foundations of your research project. Grand theories define the boundaries of your subject area. And much of your discussion in your chapters will draw on mid-range theories. Okay? They provide your analytical framework that you're using, and they help you inform you what you require for analysis and what the most appropriate means of acquiring this information. And this is where theory is important. It directs and guides you. It's the torch that shines on, I'm looking at X, I need Y to get Z. Okay? So you do need to understand the theoretical side, not just the content, but to be able to give a theory explanation of what you're doing. Without the analytical framework, you risk drowning in a sea of information. Because you can go onto the EBSCO and you can put in whatever you're looking for, domestic violence, effects of training, whatever, and you'll get 1,000,001 articles and you will just drown in them.
I remember you saying last week that we should narrow it down, find ways to narrow it down to get to the least amount of books to find what you're looking for.
But this is where your analytical framework will help you narrow it down. You will begin eliminating articles that are not psychodynamic or CBT based or feminist based or whatever your analytical framework is. You don't utilize them. You keep yourself focused on what is needed. So the most essential task is to discuss the leading theories to explain the problem of interest, comparing the strengths of arguments underlying them and their empirical foundation. So don't go and give me the peripheral. Give me the core theories, key theories. Without them, you'll have missed the point. Okay? Somebody's minor theory, that's their theory of Joe Blogg's website, doesn't cut it. It needs to be one of the key theories out of a textbook from journal articles. It's recognized by others as a key theory in your area of study or key explanation. Then you can say, oh, so-and-so's got an interesting idea about this. You can bring those in, but you do need to have the key elements. So does that make a little more sense of theories? Of the role of theory and what theory is? It's really important to get your head around the ideas behind this. And then begin categorizing, well, what are my readings? Put them into piles. Meta theory, grand theory, mid-range, micro, and see what kind of readings you've got. Try and classify your readings. You can begin getting a feel of what you've got and where. If you've got a whole pile of micro theories but no mid-range theory, then you haven't got a structuring analytical framework. You need to look for more information in that area. Or if you have an overarching theory, is it giving you enough structure and holding you, or do you need to look for more detailed elements? So, the purpose of the literature review. The reading there is from Bell, the review of literature. This is where I got the side information from, is from each of these readings. So, the purpose of the literature review is to outline the area you're researching, explaining why it matters, summarizing the research that has been done, particularly key studies, identifying gaps, and why your study is important and what it adds. Okay? So, 4 simple broad points. What is the area? Why does this area matter? What has been done? And why are you doing what you're doing? There's your research proposal.
Putting it like that, it sounds really kind of
Simple.
simple. Yeah. To be honest.
Yeah. That's the structuring you need to think about. When it comes to dissertations, this is all about structure, people. You need a lot of structure in your work. You don't structure it, it ends up a confusing mess. So, outline the area you're researching broad. That's what it gives you. Explains why people have studied this area, what has been done, and seminal key studies. If you keep coming across the same names and same authors in different journal articles or books, that's a key topic. There will be seminal articles in your topic area that you need to draw on. So like Rogers' person-centered paper of 1956 was a seminal paper. Suddenly everybody was referring to it. It's that kind of key paper is what you need to look for, key studies. From there you identify, well, what hasn't been done? What hasn't been done properly? Present your research questions or hypotheses if you're doing quantitative. And these are set out at the end of your literature review normally. So you discuss everything and you say, coming out of this, these are the questions I'm sitting with. These are the areas that haven't been dealt with. This is what I want to investigate and why. And return to your literature review after you've collected your data as well, after you've reread it, okay? Because it's got to have a clear argument leading up to your research. It's not a simple summarizing.
Kevin, you know when you said why? You know when you just said, just before the when you say like, is it like in the sense of that? Because the way I'm looking at my research is that it's part personal.
Yeah, so you've got to justify why you're doing it.
And that's something that, you know, in the discussion at the end when we provide the review, for example, this study confirm blah 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 or
So that's in your discussion point. Yeah.
exactly the same review
Yes.
every articles we
Yes.
use in the
Yes. Yeah. You'll draw on your literature review for your discussion.
because sometimes I see lots of articles they use in the discussion completely different.
They can. Sometimes they find new material because it's taken time and new materials come through subsequently to back up. But you can. You can look for more material. If new materials come up between when you last did your literature review and your write-up, you add it in. Add it into your discussion section or add it into your review. Okay? So include all key studies and theories. The review of the literature for the research proposal isn't as extensive as your final research write-up. Okay? So your research proposal is not a detailed write-up. But for this assignment, I'm expecting a more detailed write-up. But for your actual proposal next year, it's a summary of the current research. Yes. This is not the proposal for your dissertation. This is an assignment called research proposal. But you're going to use this to structure it for your dissertation proposal next semester or next year, so you get through it. Yes, you basically will have done your research proposal. And you've got 4 weeks to get your research proposal written up and in at level 6.
So we're just giving a brief kind of
Yes.
description of what we want to do.
You're taking this research proposal, if it's passed and it's been good enough, and you're summarizing it down and handing that in on the form. But for this, I'm expecting more detailed literature and methodology write-up because I want to see that you understand the area you're researching and you know how you're going to do it.
How many words, Kevin? Sorry.
3,000. Some standard piece of work, 3,000. It's like another essay. 3,000 words. So, literature review, as we're saying, you've defined your topic, you're thinking about what you're going to be getting, think about your management as well, but there are stages to your literature review. So, there's a review of literature for your research proposal, is a broad summary of the current literature, versus literature review. They're not the same thing. Okay, so next year you're only putting in a brief review of your literature. This year's assignment is a critical evaluation and analysis of the literature on which your dissertation rests or will rest. Critical evaluation and analysis. Formative by the 20th. Yeah, I want to see a question, a topic area, and a question, and methodology if you've got one defined. But by the 20th of April, I need to see that everybody's got a topic and a more or less clearly defined question, or a question that we can work on to define it more clearly for you.
By the 20th of April.
Yeah.
That's day back.
So the 21st was back on
No, we're back on the 20th.
Yeah, but I'm going on holidays.
Huh? So, 3 stages of literature searching: a broad area, make a large collection of relevant materials. Once you've got all of those, scan your abstracts and summaries, and these will help you find further materials as well. So these are broad sweeps of the pen, of the brush. You're looking broadly. I'm looking in domestic violence, so you put in domestic violence, see what comes up. Domestic violence and whatever else it might be you're looking at. Depression. So you eliminate and you get then other related articles. Third stage, you begin to consider all material in terms of which papers and chapters need to be read in depth and where there are gaps in your literature. Okay? Not gaps in the literature per se, gaps in your literature. What have you not covered? So you get a lot of material, you begin to whittle that way. As you get your topic defined down, you begin to focus on more specifics. Then you tease those out, see what you've got, and see where else you need to get more material. Then stop and begin reading what you've got. So you do literature review. You review the literature at 3 key points: when you're beginning, and the planning stages, and when you've completed towards the end of the project, because there might be new theories or other points that have come up that you need to review. So you go back and relook at the literature, and that's where other theories and literature articles come in. You're not stuck in your original review. You draw on that heavily. But if you found something you need an explanation for, you've got to go and look for other theories or other ideas. So you would say something along the lines of, the discussion so far hasn't covered the topics that have emerged from the research. And looking broadly, these are the new areas that the theory can discuss or define or explain it. So your theory, the importance of theory, shows your understanding of the knowledge that provides you with your philosophical foundation to your project, provides an important part of the research design. The theory helps determine your design as well. So the first lecture back we're going to be covering is research design. So the second half of the semester we're looking at methodology in detail. Okay, trying to explore. Now, for some of you, those methodologies won't be relevant because you'll be decided I'm doing quantitative, not qualitative, or vice versa. But you do need to know about the different methodologies. And you might find, hang on, I haven't got quite right. So do come to the methodology lectures. So this is why theory is important, people. You can't write your dissertation without a theoretical framework. Otherwise you're just sitting with a large lump of content and information with no explanation. It becomes a description of something rather than an explanation about something. And a dissertation is an explanation about something, not just a description of something. That's level 4 work. You're heading to level 6 work, where it's critical evaluation and analysis is the key component of what you're doing. So you've got to move beyond content to analysis. And that's the challenge that you're in from level 5, is moving from description to analysis. So how do you write up your literature review? There's a whole book on it. That's how important it is. There's plenty of chapters available on writing a literature review. The important thing about a literature review in a dissertation project is it's structuring your project. So you generate your ideas, you plan it out, you begin writing, and you get to revision, and you build it back in with more readings and writings. It's a continuous loop. You're not going to do your dissertation in one sitting. You're going to write your dissertation at least 3, maybe even 4 times. It is a lot of writing. And so don't get too wedded to your first draft. You're going to trash large sections, reorganize large sections. Okay? You want a good grade, that's what it takes. You know, when your supervisor puts big red lines through it and arrows and says move this here and put that there and this is unclear, don't go home despondent. You're in the first stage of thinking something through. This is a big project. And it's a conceptualization. The real struggle with any dissertation process and research process is your conceptualization of what you're dealing with. And that takes time and takes discussion. By reading and sharing with your supervisor, but also with your peers. Form yourself into mini research groups and discuss your project. Because only by discussing it do you know whether you're making sense of it or not. Because otherwise your group will look at you and go, I don't know what you're talking about. So use mind mapping. As I said, they give you different ideas. This is an example of a mind map on mindfulness and depression and the use of it and the different ideas, and this will help you structure out your literature review. Put your ideas into, as you're finding them, put them into a mind map. Begin seeing it visually. Whatever works for you, put them into a structure so you begin placing the different pieces of work in your different areas. Because otherwise you're just going to be overwhelmed. Okay? And so from broad questions down to specific. That's what you're looking for. Yeah, but you also have to get to a specific question. Why is mindfulness important? Well, you know, can help you get to what you're needing and to make sense of questions. Another way of structuring your readings is to use the headings, as I've said. That's just meaningless Latin, but it's to give you an example of structure. This is an example of how you structure, otherwise you get caught up in the content. So this is just Latin. So a main heading, a subheading, a subheading, a sub-subheading. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 levels of headings. And you can write out your whole dissertation in point form like this, as a structuring tool. You need to be able to put that as like this, and then you'll be able to move your points around to, is the structure working? Without being caught up in the content. Because what happens with dissertation writing is you get caught up in the content and you fail to see the structure. So only by creating structure, and that if you can put each paragraph down to a single point, what is this paragraph discussing? And you put those in point order form, then you'll know, does it actually fit in there or does it need to go there? Does my argument flow? Okay, you can do this for any of your assignments, but it's about what is that paragraph arguing. Single word, 2 words. Criticism of Freud. Oh, it's at the beginning. No, I haven't discussed Freud yet. I need to discuss Freud. Freud's ideas. Research on Freud. Criticisms of Freud. That's a better structure. Okay? You should be able to summarize your whole thing into point form to help you with structuring. And that's where you use the headings in Word, the heading styles, heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, to create that structuring. It gives you a skeleton structure from which you can work. So, there's different levels of analysis that you can look at. You need to look at it actively, evaluate relevance to the project, and include selected material relevant to the review, create a conceptual framework, we've been saying all along, and an operational research problem, your question. So you have your topic, include the areas and material related to the topic, but you've got a specific question you keep coming down to. So your question relates to the topic each time. So once you've got a large pile of paper, you need to sort it. Be careful of boring your marker to death. I do not just want an endless summary of research. Okay? It has to be, particularly when you write up your dissertation, that's why I'm getting you to write up your literature review now, because then you'll have done the bulk of your literature review for your dissertation. If you do it well now, you can draw on this and add to it for your final dissertation. So I'm trying to get you guys ahead of the ball game. By writing it critically now, you have got your dissertation literature review already just about done. You'll refine it and improve upon it and add new material that you find. But that's why do not describe one study after the other in a descriptive manner. So what? Where's your critical analysis and evaluation of those studies? What does that mean that study A and study B found X, but study C found Y? You need to give a discussion around that. Otherwise you just give me a whole list of information, which is great, it's a nice summary, but meaningless in and of itself. So students who use an overly descriptive style of writing tend to not explain why these studies might be of interest, are not clearly highlighting the focus of the study. They don't show how the studies they're reviewing fit into the overall picture. They're not critically evaluating the literature they're reviewing, and they're not offering a coherent narrative. So to move from descriptive to critically evaluative, explain, highlight, link it to why you're doing it, critically evaluate where you can, and bring it together in a meaningful discussion. It's a hard task. Okay? And you can see it's slightly different from writing an assignment. It is more challenging.
But somehow it just sounds a bit more, if we follow your structure.
You won't have a problem.
Yeah. It just sounds,
It's easier said than done. Yeah. And this is where you can get this right by reading and rereading and rereading and rewriting. That's why you're not going to get it right first go. Because it takes time to embed those concepts and ideas and theories so that you can reach the point of being critically evaluative. And that only comes with reading, reading and rereading. Because the ideas have to meld in your mind and formulate into a more meaningful structure. You're not going to get it immediately. It takes time to get that understanding, the depth of understanding that comes with this. So you need to develop your own narrative. So what you're going to show are the patterns in what you found in the literature, highlighting the key issues and debates in the field, which leads you to being able to ask a relevant and interesting research question or set of questions. That's the goal. You're telling me a story. You're reading me a story of literature. Not just a summary of literature, but an overall story of so-and-so said X, but person Y said W, and this means this, and following on from that, therefore, it means the following things need to be investigated. You're weaving a tale of why you're getting to your research question. Why have you arrived at this question and not something else? So reviewers that have their own narrative offer a coherent, logical story written in their own words. It flows. That's why. Talk about your project, people. Talk about it till your family and friends are bored to death with it and don't want to hear anymore. The more you talk about it, the more you make it your own story. So include the relevant studies and interpret them. Have a framework so the reader has a good idea how one study is related to another. Just having a list of studies is, how do they relate? What does that mean? Okay. And use the studies to develop a conceptual understanding of the topic and draw out the significance for the reader to understand. So you're drawing out the different topic areas and explaining why this is important to the reader. State the obvious sometimes. Rogers' 1956 study was important because it started the ball rolling on X, Y, Z. Non-directive therapy emerged. So, how do you bring it all together? So there's different ways of bringing your literature review together. So use strong attention-seeking headlines. So this is where you will use headings in your work, in your dissertation. You use headings and subheadings to grab people. For example, a person doing their study last year on what brings you here, why people chose to do counseling in the first place. She had one of her main headings was the God complex. She goes, oh, that's a nice heading to have. I'm intrigued. What does she mean by this? What's under this? Okay? So it pulls the reader in. And she had made a very valid and insightful point about the God complex in people and counseling. Okay? Not in newspaper, but grounded in the research. Use of statistics to be effective for timelines, if you can utilize those appropriately, and bring those sort of elements in. Previous studies or the research on depression, the levels of depression in the UK are, and there are lots of materials available from government sources through the Flex. You can get to a lot of the government resources on statistics, people. And those are useful background grounding of some of the particular problems you might be dealing with. Okay. Using anecdotes, a particular incident, and this is where what happened to me type story, where you're relating to it personally, or a person's story is being brought into it. Just be careful, it can get wearisome if overused, but you bring in a description of something of why this matters. So this research, and here is a storyline of somebody's, a client's, your own, whatever, that makes it relevant. Define and discuss the main concepts. Okay, you need to clarify your key concepts that are being used. What are they? What do they mean? How do they operate? So that we all know what you mean by XYZ concept. You know, self-image. Particularly vague concepts that are more vague, where there can be a range of definitions depending on the theory used. So you define your self-concept based from the theory you are using. Again, finally use the source text, as I say, key texts. If you need to, go back to the original. Because too often somebody's work has been interpreted and reinterpreted, interpreted again, and now we're somewhat distantly removed. Are they actually saying the same thing? Or is it now Chinese whispers? We haven't quite got it. Sometimes it's necessary to go back to some of the original and link to. Maybe something important has been missed out or been wrongly interpreted. So always go back to key sources. Find good reviews of texts. Okay. There are frequently reviews on literature reviews, analytical reviews, meta-reviews, meta-theoretical explanations. Those are useful topics to look for. So introduce and link your texts throughout. Critically engage with what has gone before. Synthesize the areas, bring them together. Challenge the existing stuff. Seek to expand the debate. Identify issues that you wish to pursue. So again, this is an argument. You're putting forward an argument. This is my topic. this is what's been done, this is why I think it's important, that's why I'm doing X. That's what we're looking for. In the same sort of way, but just written in a more academic style. So they hang together to create a sustained, academically rigorous, logical flow. That says it for itself. Persuasive, argument, exploratory, narrative. And your literature review is acting as the thread that holds everything together. So it's a comprehensive net that contains the work you're doing and provides the guidance, it provides the torch, it's the backbone of your topic. Without that, you just got content, people. Now I've just seen a student who has to resubmit their dissertation because she didn't have a theory. She had lots of content, but no theory. So nothing hung together. She had no explanation. Presented results. So what? So 42 people did X and 25 people had Y. So what? How are you making sense of this information? So there are different kinds of review frameworks. Chronological, thematic, cross-disciplinary, and theoretical. So you can think about how you approach your reviews. Do we need to take a break?
Yes, please.
Let's stop here for a moment and take a break. Come back